Welcome to the Ayn Rand Fan Club. I'm Scott Schiff along with William Swig. William, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Well, I am thrilled to welcome our guest today, somebody I've had the opportunity to get to work with on Clubhouse recently. It's the CEO of the Atlas Society, Jennifer Grossman. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
Great. Well, I'd like to start with your history. I don't know really how you got into Rand and just even your path to becoming CEO.
Sure. Well, I got into Rand a little later in life. It was when I was at the Cato Institute as their director of education policy. But as I laid out in our beta prototype Draw My Life, my name is Jennifer Grossman. I think that there were a lot of experiences that primed me to connect with her literature and her ideas. Being born in India, the child of Peace Corps parents, coming back and having a little bit of a hard time integrating, and also having early experiences with bullying at my school. And at the time, it was very bewildering because you tend to think of people that are being bullied, they're the misfits, they're, being bullied because they're fat or they're slow or what have you. But I was really bullied. Well, the girls that came together and created an IHJ club, an I Hate JAG club. I was put on trial for the charge of being conceited, which, I had to ask my parents what it meant. But I took it to mean thinking highly of myself, which I did. And that gave me this, and also when I would kind of try to interact with my tormentors and just say, well, what can I do to get you to stop? What can I give you? What do you need from me? And they said, we just want you to kill yourself. And I thought, well, I'm not really going to do that at all. I'm enjoying my life. And so I think that later when I would read Rand's books about her explanation of envy in particular, about people that didn't necessarily want what you have, but they wanted you not to have it, and that they hated you for what they didn't have or what they couldn't achieve or what they wouldn't achieve. So that's really what primed me. And then when I was at the Cato Institute, I remember Jose Pinera was a colleague of mine. We were working on Social Security and pension reform in particular. And when he found out that I hadn't read Ayn Rand, we were around the water cooler in those days, and I think it was a conversation and people were saying, who is John Galt? And I would say, yeah, who is John Galt? And they thought I was in on it and I wasn't. And so they gave me the opportunity to redeem myself, and which I promptly did. Went home, read Atlas Shrugged in under a week, and then went on to read every other Ayn Rand newsletter, book, fiction, nonfiction, early fiction that I could get my hands on. So since that time,
what year?
I've always, wow, that was maybe 25 years ago. So, okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your.
Yeah, so I from that time I had Ayn Rand on my license plate, and so everybody knew that I was really into Ayn Rand. And yeah, so when this job came up, David Kelly was casting about, trying to find a new executive, and people pointed him in my direction. They said, well, that Jennifer Grossman, JAG, who lives up on a cliff in Malibu, she's really into Ayn Rand. And so that's when the trustees approached me and put me through what was, at the time, seemed to me a extremely intense grilling process, which I'm happy to go into.
Can I ask about the Cato years? When you were first introduced to Ayn Rand by Jose, Was there something about Ayn Rand's writing or her ideas, like something in particular that caught your attention and made you want to investigate further?
Well, I was first struck just by her literary style. I found that her dialogue was very concise and very tight, and the way that she integrated the plot with the theme and the characterization. So that was what first kind of made me fall in love with it. But again, it was her writing about envy, about not giving the sanction of the victim, and also her unapologetic, passionate defense of capitalism. But I also think that as a woman, I resonated with the fact that she created this incredible body of work at a time when it wasn't that common for women to do so. And so I was just inspired by the fact that she broke barriers and did this. And of course, she wasn't necessarily thinking of the fact that she was a woman, but at the same time, I think she was also had an appreciation of femininity and masculinity. And I know that that is seen as, maybe adjacent, and some view her perspective on gender roles as a bit controversial. But I found it very compelling. And I also thought that her female characters were the kinds of, not Dominique, but Dagny were the kind of executives and women that I wanted to be, but also just the process that they had to go through to shrug, to let go of trying to make things work that were not going to work, and that were bringing her down. And I think that as women in particular, because of the way that we're wired and because of the way that we're socialized as well to be nurturing, to have this estrogen, that we can be particularly vulnerable to attempts to take advantage of us and make us serve others and put others' interests ahead of our own. And that, of course, never works.
That's why a lot of women probably end up being more liberal as a generalization. But since you opened it, I'm very curious to hear about some of this grilling process, if you want to just touch on that briefly.
Sure. Well, yeah, it was one interview after another. All of the trustees would fly in for these meetings, and I had interviews with each of them and all of them, and background checks. And I was like, I don't know, guys, I mean, I'm into Ayn Rand, but this is small organization isn't doing that well right now. Clearly for them, it was like a major deal. And I remember, they said, well, we really were impressed by your professional experience, your executive background, but we're just not sure you're enough of an objectivist, that, we're maybe want somebody who's more steeped in objectivism. And, yes, you've read all of it, but your objectivist credentials aren't necessarily. And I said, if this is an organization that needs some significant reform and change and an improvement in management, and if you are looking for somebody who is going to be that executive, and you're putting this as your priority, then I'm not sure I want to be a part of this venture, because what you need first and foremost is you need somebody who can bring a bold new vision. And you have David Kelly, you have others who have the experience in objectivism, and it's something that I can learn. But mostly you need the management team that have a really great work ethic and that have creativity and that can work as a team and that can figure out ways to make alliances and partnerships to make it grow. So yeah, we came to terms, and I said, how much time do I have? Because it didn't look to me at the moment like we had that much oxygen in the room. And I said, and they said, well, we'll at least give you a year. So that's how we started out. And I have to give tremendous credit and gratitude to the chairman of the board, Jay LaPere. He encouraged us to really continue to experiment, try different things, and what comes with that is a tolerance for failure. So, you know, we have a startup mentality. There are a lot of things that we've tried in the past that haven't worked. The Ayn Rand emojis were one of them. I mean, it cost a ton of money to do those, and they didn't quite achieve the ubiquity that I had hoped. And there were other things that we did that didn't work. But I think that the things that we did that did work wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had that willingness to make mistakes, to fail, and to embrace failure for what it would teach us and how we could learn and improve.
Sure, like with any innovative process. Well, I'm curious, you know, you brought up Draw My Life. I think that's been one of the more successful endeavors. You partner with that creatively with Patrick Reasonover. Can you tell us a little bit of that?
Yeah, so it was interesting. It was the time that my parents were approaching their 50th wedding anniversary, and I wanted to do something creative for them, you know, more than just like a slideshow. So I started looking into what kinds of video genres were popular and were trending. And there was this genre called Draw My Life, where celebrities or, you know, anybody, I think even that wasn't the head of Google, but maybe it was head of Google content, but she chose the genre in order to communicate, would narrate their life. My name is so-and-so, I was born here, my parents were this I started here, and then this bad thing happened, and this happened. Right. It's just a quick narrative form. And then that is speed ramped. And so since we had like $500 or something to do the video, I was like, well, okay, we'll try this. So the first videos that we did, I wrote them all. I still write most of them, although now Patrick and I work collaboratively on those. And I drew the first ones too. I drew My Name is Ayn Rand, and I narrated it. So I found a neighbor who works with Hollywood actors to help them perfect their accents for roles where they're playing, you know, somebody from Great Britain or Spain or what have you. And so he worked with me for weeks on a Russian accent. And so so that's what I did. And I kind of like those early ones because what is part of what's compelling about the genre is that it's not perfect, right? That we're inundated with so much highly processed video content like advertising that people tend to kind of, you know, look a little bit skeptically at it, or they know that they're being sold. So the imperfection of the Draw My Life video is what makes it, I think, more immediate. So at the same time, you know, you see some of the early Draw My Lives and they're stick figures. And so I was balancing this tension of wanting to reach people with the genre, with what makes the genre so compelling, which is in part its imperfections and its naivete, but at the same time knowing that the people that were funding it were going to want these are horrible drawings, like, stick figures or what. And we didn't go with stick figures, but the early drawings were, more basic. And so I think though, once we were able to establish the audience, that then we were able to experiment more. And it's funny because I think it was the first one was My Name Is, the first one that I did with professionals as opposed to ones that I drew myself, was, I think, My Name Is Envy. And I found a production partner that we started down the path, but I obviously had very definite views about the way that I wanted things to look, the kind of music, the kind of sound. And so at the last minute, and I'm not going to name who that person is, they know who they are, and they're very sorry now, backed out. And so I had to scramble, and I was really very fortunate to find Patrick. And we've been doing these ever since. And he's also just a tremendous friend and a tremendous intellect and artist in his own right.
Well, I like the drawing series because it helps create an aesthetic for, around the movement, or at least one type of aesthetic, and it gets artists involved. And I think there's not enough funding for artists in the objectivist community, or at least at the organizational level. Do you have any plans for including other artists in other types of projects like this?
We do, of course. We also have our graphic novels, which have been animated. And in those projects, we work with Dan Parsons, who is a widely recognized Marvel Comics illustrator, winner of the Inkwell Award. So it's been a real pleasure working with him on both the graphic novel adaptation of Red Pawn, which was second, and Anthem, which was first. Red Pawn was one of my favorite projects. And it was funny. It was one of Ayn Rand's earliest works. It was a screenplay that she wrote. And when I brought it to the board, that none of them had heard of it. And I was like, okay, well, you guys may be all more steeped in objectivism, but how can you miss this really important and beautiful work? So now we are doing a third graphic novel with Dan, and it's going to be adapting notes that Ayn Rand had written for a screenplay. Her working title was Top Secret, and it's really about the Manhattan Project, and the theme is about what scientific geniuses working within the context of freedom as opposed to working within the context of totalitarianism, what they can achieve. And so that's going to be great. I wish we had actual text from Ayn Rand to work from rather than just her notes, but so that's going to be a further extension. And we are working with a very widely recognized artist associated with Ayn Rand. And we have already done 2 of those pieces, but I'm not ready to announce it yet.
Okay.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, I actually watched the Red Pawn one on video. I think you had a series on YouTube, and I watched that, and that was very well done. So I look forward to this Top Secret one. It sounds really great.
Thank you. Yes, the Red Pawn was great, except for that female voiceover artist. She wasn't very good.
One thing I saw you do in the last year, really, in quick succession, was to bring in, at least 3 well-known thinkers from the objectivist world: Richard Salzman, Professor Jason Hill, and Rob Trzynski, which, I mean, it's fascinating because I don't agree with everything all of them say, but they don't even agree with each other some of the time. And but yet they do so in a way that doesn't turn into a schism. And so I'm just, I'm curious, how that came about and your process, and, how you.
Yeah, so when I first took over, I was just wrapping my head like, the astronaut crash landing. Where am I? How do I know? And
What do I
do
do?
I do? And so, it's kind of like, where am I? What do you guys do? Like exactly. And I could get that they had a summer conference, and but I could just see, like, if we just continued doing these summer conferences, like what would that accomplish? Make some people happy, and they get to connect with other objectivists and people that have been going to the conferences for a long time. But I didn't. I was more interested in spreading Ayn Rand's ideas, and I started with the premise, which was that most people have never ever heard of Ayn Rand, and I kind of intuited that on an intellectual, on a just a intuitive anecdotal level by having this license plate and going from, angry looks to blank stares, and seeing that really as an opportunity to reintroduce Ayn Rand on our own terms to new audiences. So, having just, I would say, like, I've got 5 marbles, right? And what am I going to do with them? Very scarce resources. And so I put an end to the summer seminars, and I made the shift in what we were doing from being more academic and catering to existing objectivists to focusing on young people who had never heard of Ayn Rand. And that was very painful. And we took a hit in funding, and a lot of people were not happy with me. But I just said, give me a little bit of time, be patient. There is a method to my madness. I'm going to specifically create these vehicles which are going to allow us to build a network of followers and an engaged community online. That's what we did with the Draw My Life videos. That's what we did with our social media. And then we're really going to have some big wins. We're going to dominate in certain sectors. And then I'm going to take that back to donors and to new donors. And once I've stabilized the organization financially, then we'll be able to go back and build out more of a faculty. We brought Stephen Hicks on early, and he's been tremendous with the Atlas Intellectuals seminars that he does, and really building out the curricula for that course, and helping us to move to make sure that all of the pieces of content, no matter how edgy or obnoxious or juvenile or profound, that they have links to scholarly articles and previous lectures and things like that. But once we had kind of found ourselves at a place where we had built that network, and we were starting to grow our new donor base, then I wanted to expand, and I had met Richard Salzman at a White House event honoring Art Laffer, and started feeling him out and seeing if he would talk to us, because I've of course had the experience. A lot of people, not only will they not talk to me, they won't shake my hand. So like, will you talk to us? And just cultivated that, started auditing his seminars, and then recruited him, Jason Hill, talked to him, and kind of found out what each of them wanted to do. And so that's been really rewarding. And yes, they definitely don't agree with each other on certain things. Obviously the Ukraine policy being the biggest one, but they're all lockstep in terms of the fundamentals of objectivist philosophy.
With regard to objectivists not agreeing with each other, the Atlas Society promotes open objectivism, and that's on your website. So I'm wondering, do you address this question in objectivism of open versus closed, and like how open are you? Are there limits? What are your standards for what an objectivist is? Like how do you determine who to bring into the tent?
Well, for me, part of it really has to do with David Kelly's, the works that he's done on benevolence, and the importance of having an open attitude and orientation towards others. And it's summed up by the quote, if we are right, we have nothing to fear, and if we're wrong, then we have something to learn. And it's a very important way of having respect and honoring and finding common ground with other people, because you need to be able to have a dialogue and a conversation, and not just kind of lecture to people and give them the truth, and not be open to what they have to say. So for me, it has a lot to do with how we are able to find areas of common ground, but then also know that there are going to be places where we're not going to agree, but that shouldn't stop us from being able to learn from each other on those points where we have some consensus.
Sure. I'm actually kind of blown away by your story about the bullying, because it's right in line with these conventional objectivists that, think that being an objectivist that is calling themselves one improperly is like the worst sin of all mankind. And they tried to buy TAS out of existence in 2007. So I just think, and I get it. I've had someone tell me to kill myself because I was an Ayn Rand fan. And that's the type of thing. It's realizing that they're just, certain people that have that mindset just aren't going to, play nice. And it is best to just move on and just find better allies out there.
Yeah, and I think to also recognize that it stems from fear, it stems from insecurity, it stems from weakness. And so that, of course, it's when someone is threatening you with something or is in a position to harm you, then it's hard to muster any empathy for the fact that their hostility is coming from a place of lack rather than a place of strength. But yeah, I mean, it's been a theme throughout my career, particularly since I've been brought into organizations or departments to shake things up or to try something new. I mean, when I went to Dole, I was hired to create a nutrition institute for the owner of Dole, David Murdoch. And I had to kind of take over the existing people that they had, which included a nutritionist who was obese, as unfortunately I find so many registered dietitians are themselves struggling with their weight and therefore not able to be very good representatives for the kinds of advice that they're trying to give. And she made my life miserable, which was crazy. And I've had other, experiences, including here when I started out coming in and people making things very difficult for me. And I remember kind of telling my mother, that she's just horrible to me. And my mother would say, Jag, just remember, you have everything and she has nothing. So yeah, that was a helpful kind of reminder that a lot of times people that are coming from that space, they're motivated by envy and also by fear. As in her case, it was well deserved because I fired her shortly thereafter.
Well, I'm glad you were already toughened up some when you started the role. I want to ask a little bit about some of the guests you've had, because that's another thing I've been really impressed with. I see myself as someone good at recognizing patterns, and I see some in these guests, and I'm just curious if I'm reading this right. One thing is you could take these people and almost start a Gulch with them. Eric Prince of Blackwater could handle security. Dershowitz and Kaczynski could handle the legal piece. Scott Atlas and Jeffrey Tucker to decide when lockdowns were appropriate.
Never.
That's right. That's who we want deciding. Grover Norquist and Art Laffer for tax policy. Peter Thiel, John Mackey, Chip Wilson, Steve Forbes, building industries. Even Peter Diamandis and Aubrey de Grey working on the futurism part.
And Michael Saylor, don't forget Michael Saylor.
Oh, okay, another good one. Are you building a secret society, and can I join?
Maybe and yes.
We don't talk about the secret society.
First rule of secret society: don't talk about secret society.
That's right. Just on a slightly more serious note, I actually think that most of them have themselves faced some degree of being canceled, or at least attempts at canceling them. And that seems to me some of that same theme of, it's like, oh, I don't care if you say I'm not supposed to talk to this person or the libertarians, or, this person has an un-PC view, that, you're going to talk to them anyway. And I'm just curious how conscious that is, because it does come across.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of them have. We had Dorian Gray on. I think in a way, Chip Wilson was a victim of that whole effort, after he put Who is John Galt on one of his famous Lululemon yoga bags. So I think that what people need to come to terms with is that there's no amount of virtue signaling, placating, apologies that are going to appease the people that envy and that want you to suffer. So so don't bother. And it's just it get canceled, whatever. I mean, it's not that. I mean, it is important if you lose your voice on a particular platform, but I always say, to be objective, you have to have perspective. And sometimes just we get so wrapped up in a crisis mindset of something that goes wrong. Things go wrong, and you can figure it out, and figure out how to repair or do a workaround or go in a completely different direction.
Yeah. One thing I like is that you put your scholars out there. They're not in these ivory towers just doing, advanced classes, but they get on Clubhouse. And I mean, that's part of what attracted me. It's like, oh, it's like Stephen Hicks. I can actually ask him some questions live. It's great. And, I don't know.
They're amazing. I mean, and Richard with his Instagram takeovers, I just absolutely love them. And the students love them, and having the opportunity now to get them out on campus has been really, really great.
Right.
So it's new, and I'm looking forward to the other innovations. One of the things I'm really excited about in particular that we started about 2 years ago, a little less, is the whole international expansion. We started with a couple of translations of our Draw My Life videos into Spanish. And then, of course, during the lockdowns, I was like, what can I do? What do I have? You know, it's always like Hunger Games with me. I have to look around and see what I have to work with. And I was like, well, I think I have some high school Spanish. Let me see if I can brush that up. So I hired a teacher from Venezuela and I started working on that. And I then started doing a few interviews in Spanish. And then with the success of our Spanish language videos, I was able to recruit someone to do the Spanish speaking for me. Antonella Marti, of course,
Right.
is tremendously accomplished and a brilliant scholar, author of many books, the latest of which is Afectivismo, Preguntas y Respuestas. And so then we were able to start Sociedad Atlas, which is in some ways duplicates a lot of what we do in terms of our social media content, our animated videos, and then she, of course, does interviews and Instagram takeovers as well. And actually, on my way a day after tomorrow to meet her in Mexico City for a conference there. So it's been great,
Okay.
but also, you know, some big surprises, like who knew that an Arabic translation would become our most widely viewed video ever with over 8 million views. And so we were able to attract funding for more translations. And just before this interview, I was looking at the Arabic version of My Name is Envy. So that's going to be
Fascinating. I think I saw you write something a couple of years ago about Ayn Rand being popular in India. And
yes, Ayn Rand Rising in India, which is personal for me because,
Right.
you know, my middle name is Anju. That's why I go by my initials, Jag, and was born there. And yes, Ayn Rand, I think the most searches for Ayn Rand after United States and Canada or UK is India. And I think there's a lot of reasons why those ideas resonate there. So we've done Hindi language videos, would love to do more, and always looking for donors who want to sponsor particular language content. I had an early morning call today with some prospects in Germany, looking together to put a team there because we haven't done German yet. So
okay, great. Well, something else I've been heartened by, I saw a new show called Not a Real Libertarian Podcast, which to me, it kind of shows that the whole, you know, you're not a real blank has become something of a joke in the liberty movement. And I'm curious if you're seeing that, you know, especially among younger people that don't know all the schism history.
yeah, let me tell you something. I just got off of our staff call earlier this morning, and we sent two of our young ladies, student program manager and a development associate, to my favorite conference of the year, which I didn't get to go to, unfortunately, this year, which was the Turning Point's Young Women's Leadership Summit.
Oh, right.
I
Okay.
love that conference. It is thousands and thousands, like 5,000, I think, young women, high school students and college students and conservatives. And, you know, how many of them have heard of schisms or objectivism? How many of them have heard of Ayn Rand?
Yeah.
Okay, like 15%, maybe. And the only reason that they have is because through our partnership with Turning Point, all of their thousands of activism kits that they send out include a copy of the Anthem graphic novel or the Red Pawn graphic novel. That's rubber hits the road. That's doing something, okay? Schisms, this, that, blah, 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 white people. I mean, okay, fine, sure. Like, let's have a whole bunch of different things. Create a product that young people are going to love. Find a way to distribute it as wide as possible. Make it compelling so that it distributes itself. And that's how you get people to discover Ayn Rand. You just have to adapt. nature
How
to
do
be
you,
commanded must be obeyed. And this is the nature of our times.
isn't it a hard thing to figure out, like what a young person is going to like, and then whether that's a good product or a bad product for the objectivist, philosophy? Like, let's say like TikTok or something. I know there's all these TikTok videos and they're pretty popular, but they're only a few seconds long. Is that a good medium to spread objectivism, or are you just contributing to the cultural problem of like inattention, like they can't even focus on anything for a few seconds or more?
Well, TikTok is tremendously popular. I think that there is something to be said for finding a way to be concise. I mean, that is really challenging. Being concise, being compelling, being articulate, and being funny. And so, would it be better not to put little clips of Ayn Rand's, soundbite from her, from a Mike Wallace interview, or a Thomas Sowell, or a Milton Friedman, or a clip from one of our interviews? I mean, is that contributing to like the degradation of people's attention spans? I don't think so. We're on TikTok. We're, the biggest purveyor of any kind of Ayn Rand related content on TikTok. Some people may just passively consume it, but I tend to think of all of these as advertising, but it's advertising in a relatively cost-effective way. And people who are interested can come back and look at the website and sign up for Morals and Markets, or sign up for Atlas Intellectuals, or sign up for the book club, or read the book. So the jury's still out, but I think that right now you have to start with the premise that the awareness of Ayn Rand is extremely low.
I think I tend to agree. I think for me, it's more about just the nature of how philosophies spread. They don't necessarily spread in huge chunks, like the whole philosophy. Someone takes in the whole philosophy by reading a book, and then they teach it, and that's how it spreads. I think pieces of it get adapted to certain media. And one other thing I like that you guys do is you make these funny memes. I saw one that said, quote, "When you get a 3% raise, but inflation went up by 6.8%, and then there's a picture of a cat giving a thumbs up."
Mhm.
I thought that was hilarious. And I thought that kind of plays into the whole cat meme a phenomenon on the internet. And then you're using some idea about the economy to kind of bring awareness to a capitalistic political statement. And that's kind of how objectivism will spread. It's so you take little nuggets of the philosophy and inject them into these cultural memes. And I think that's always how has spread. It's just we didn't have internet memes 100 years ago. They just had like little statements and like headlines in a newspaper or something, and that's how it would spread.
Yeah, I mean, if I go back to like my Dole days when I was working at Dole, and I think about a lot of the philanthropic work that there was to try to address, let's say, blindness or certain vitamin deficiencies in Africa. They would engineer bananas to have more of a particular nutrient. And so I think that's kind of what we're doing in a way with some of these memes, and engineering to put a element of the ethics or the metaphysics, or to put an element of economics, and just consistently hammer home a moral defense of capitalism, and then provide a path for people to learn more. We put out 50 memes a week. So it's, just obviously going to be a lot of ones that don't do well, or ones that, we have to take down, and that's fine. That kind of goes back to what I talked about before, having a high tolerance for failure and for learning, and
Experimenting.
yeah. So, but it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't always work, because you know, I'm very disciplined about who our consumer is, and there is a tension between our consumers and our customers, and so that's something that's also been one of the reasons it's been really helpful to build out the faculty, because not only does that give us more manpower and woman power to provide content and forums that our customers will enjoy, but it also provides another path for people who maybe they found the memes, or they found us on TikTok, or they found the graphic novel. And it's going to be a small percentage of those that are really interested in philosophy, really interested in reading longer books. But that's part of what we do with our consumer engagement model.
I'm just switching gears slightly. I'm curious about the annual Lifetime Achievement Award winner, and so I'm a huge Peter Thiel fan. So I know you alluded to just all the steps that you took to get him during your speech, and I'm just curious about your tenacity on that, and just any kind of personal anecdote or what he told you about Rand.
Yeah, well, what he told me about Rand was that, you know, when he had first read it in, you know, gosh, this was like in the 80s, it didn't seem that realistic to him. He didn't see, you know, the connection.
Right.
So he really did view it more as science fiction. And this is a narrative that I hear a lot of people will say, well, I read it and it didn't seem that realistic, but then it stuck with me, and I kept on seeing these headlines, and I thought, well, that's kind of like that book, Atlas Shrugged, that I read. And so that as he's sort of matured, that he's come to appreciate the need for a moral defense of capitalism. And one of the quotes that he has said that it's just sort of central for me every single day is when he talks about the fact that humanity is in a deadly race between politics and technology. And in a way, that is also a way to explain what was happening in Atlas Shrugged. You know, you had technology, you had Galt's motor, you had Reardon's metal, you had
Project X.
you had Project X, you had you know, Wyatt's fracking, and but you had the politics, and so so I see that's what's happening right now, that we have kind of the politics, which are in hyperdrive here with one party rule, and also globally with the World Economic Forum looking to shift towards the fascistic model of stakeholder capitalism, which is an anti-concept, and looking to use central planning to respond to future pandemics as disastrously as they responded to the most recent one, and also future other crises as well. So, but then we also have technology helping people to shrug, that they are finding ways to withdraw the sanction of the victim, withdraw their children from school, homeschool their children, communicate on encrypted messages, withdraw from sacrificial cities, and find places where they can more freely pursue their self-interest.
Good. And just the process of getting him, was it, I mean, did you have a sense he was going to say yes, or were you just cold calling?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I think like he had said no, then I had started a petition, and I was getting all of my friends to, people that he knew. I found a friend of mine had his goddaughter was assistant to Peter Thiel, so I would travel up and I would be giving her gifts and giving her Atlas Shrugged. My friend Ann Coulter is a very close friend of Peter Thiel's, so I hosted a party for Ann and dressed up as Ayn Rand and took pictures of us and put those on like promotional gifts and sent those to his office. And so I just kept on doing things like that. But ultimately, it was my best friend, Grover Norquist, who I've known for 30 years, who went and had breakfast with Peter Thiel and said, you should do this. And he said, okay.
That's great.
I think I've heard about those guys. I'm ready.
So you were a Bush speechwriter at one point, but from what I remember, they went after Grover Norquist pretty hard 30 years ago.
Well, because they misbehaved. They did something bad. They made a promise and they broke it. And that was wrong. So, yeah. But, Grover, I learned so much from him, including just his attitude. He's just relentlessly cheerful and always focusing on the good news. And he's tremendously productive. So. But yeah, no, but just even having the privilege of working at the White House at that time, starting out as a researcher and writing everything I could get my hands on, and I had speechwriters at the time that they were like, all right, you do a draft for me. So I would speechwrite for the speechwriters, and I also turned out to have a talent. In part because my previous job had been working at an ABC affiliate in Washington, D.C., where I learned how to write scripts and I learned how to write sound bites and I learned how to write kickers and teasers. And so, so I could take these speeches and put sound bites in them in the end, applause lines and jokes. And so, that became popular. And so really by the end of the administration, I was writing a lot of full speeches. And I asked Bob Zellick, who was a bit of a mentor to me. I said, I think you guys should give me my commission. I think that would be the right thing to do. And they did it. So, but I was always a mischief maker. And even then, some of my my jokes just wouldn't go through, particularly because Bush is a very genteel kind of person, and so edgy was not in his vocabulary. But I remember at the time that he didn't want to debate, which is a lot of times incumbents don't want to debate challengers, and so standard political kind of warfare. The Clinton campaign was sending someone in a chicken suit, right, to go to Bush's speeches to say, haha, chicken, you won't debate. And Bush was getting annoyed. And so I said, well, next time you see the chicken guy, I want you to say, well, look, there's Bill Clinton in his military uniform. They didn't go for it. So
He probably should have in retrospect. The way 92 turned out. Well, that is great. Well, I'm curious, just going forward from here, what is it that I know you touched on that a little bit, but just what where you see things in the next 5 to 10 years, and for freedom, for objectivism, for Atlas Society's role.
Yeah, well, we have more ideas than we have funding for. We have a wonderful project that we would love to do of a new documentary on Ayn Rand's life and her work, because it's been quite a while since the last documentary was released. So we have a treatment for one that would kind of be hybrid animation and real life interviews, and kind of move progressively through different artistic styles that were from the different eras of her life. So that's something that we'd love to bring to life. Of course, if anybody wants to collaborate with us on a graphic novel of Red Pawn or any other works, we'd be happy to do that. Reach out. We'll get it funded, and we'll provide the art and all of that, but I won't hold my breath. But you know, those copyrights are going to be coming available in a while, but it's always something that we can work towards. I'm open to expanding our faculty more, but I'm at the moment particularly intrigued by the possibility of doing more international outreach and doing more of these videos, because they're not that expensive for us to do. And I mean, you know, every international video we do gets a minimum of 1 million views and as much as 8 million views. And how great to be able to use those to invite people to go on another journey. I mean, Ayn Rand's works are translated into most foreign languages, so might inspire people to pick up the books. But it'd be also great to be able to translate some of these more accessible introductory works, like our graphic novels and our pocket guides as well. So that's something that I'd love to do.
Great. Do we know this year's honoree yet? Can that be, is that public?
When is this being released?
Today?
Okay. Sign up for the Atlas Society's newsletter, and I am was putting the final touches on the save the date. I can tell you that it is going to be on October 6th. I can tell you that it is going to be in Malibu at Calamigos Ranch. I can tell you that we are going to have the day of additional seminars with our faculty, as well as some on crypto technology. So stay tuned, but we'll be making that announcement momentarily.
Well, that is great. William, any final thoughts?
Sure. I just was curious. I know you talked about writing for President Bush and working with Republicans. I was wondering if you still feel like it's worth working with Republicans, and you know, how do we form some sort of coalition with people on the right?
I think it's worth working with everybody, but yeah, I definitely feel that. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues of our time was this gross violation of human freedom with the interventions in regard to the pandemic, and to the extent that we can find politicians of any party who will, I mean, we have a tax pledge, we need a no lockdown pledge. And maybe that's something that Jeffrey Tucker and the Brownstone Institute can do. I mean, they've just started and they're doing spectacular work. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of very important issues, and they don't always line up on one side or the other. But I'm voting for Michael Schellenberger for governor of California. We've interviewed him on our webinar, and he's an independent, and I think he's advancing common sense solutions to things like drug addiction and vagrancy and open air drug scenes, and also sane policy when it comes to energy and pursuit of nuclear. So, so yeah, but you know, given my career, it's only natural that I'd have a lot of my friends from my early days in Republican politics, although I remain the only Republican in my family. So I'm very comfortable,
Oh yeah, and I remember I watched the Draw My Life you did of your own life, and you mentioned your mom tried to dress you up in overalls and flannel shirts, but you rebelled and dressed in ballerina outfits. I was wondering.
Yes, I started that trend, by the way, the tiaras and the tulle skirts.
So I think that speaks to the idea that you rebel against your parents at some point. Do you think it was more of a rebellion, or was it just you chose those values for yourself, and you just enjoy dressing up like more feminine?
Yes, well, going back to what I said about Ayn Rand and her writing about femininity and masculinity and hero worship, I buy into that. And I know that probably most of our scholars would put that very low down on the totem pole, or even take issue with it. But I can't say I'm rebelling against them. I'm extremely close with my parents. Anybody who's following my Instagram page will know that. I, in a way, kind of feel that I'm continuing on their legacy, that my father is a cardiologist, my mother is a geriatric social worker. They are doing this because they derive a lot of value from wanting to improve other people's lives, and I do as well. And I want to live in a world where capitalism and freedom and individualism and reason and productivity and achievement are embraced. And so, so for me, I'm doing this in my self-interest, but I'm also doing this because I think that this is the way to bring value to other people. And I want other people to have the same transformational experience that I had, thanks to the literature and philosophy of Ayn Rand.
That's great. Well, part of the reason I've been hanging around TAS lately, just wanting a group of Ayn Rand fans that are into moral bravery and even being nice to libertarians and Christians, and being willing to even counterpunch against a corrupt establishment, like with Jeffrey Tucker. And then, I see that you're doing that. So please just keep doing what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you on Clubhouse.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, William. I really
Thank you very much.
appreciate, I love your show. And Scott, love your spirit.
Thank
Keep
you.
it feisty.
Thanks so
Keep
much.
it feisty. Okay.
Take care.
Bye, guys.